I'll speak to University of Johannesburg Center for Africa-China Studies Director, Professor David Monyae, and International Relations Expert, Dr. Charles Sinkala. But Dr. Monyae, good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Professor Monyae, apologies. This is an important moment, and I talk about certainly the highlight of this meeting being, and we're seeing some of those officials are starting to come out, I think, in a few moments. But Zelensky flanked by all these various leaders, the French president, German chancellor, Italian prime minister, British prime minister, Finnish president, and then, of course, the European Council president, as well as NATO Secretary General. Talk to me about the significance of that, Prof. Monyae, as we get started.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, indeed, this is quite a crowd. This particular meeting differs from all other meetings since the start of the war, because at this particular juncture, it appears that the entire, for the lack of a better term, the Western world, it's no longer speaking with one voice. So you have conflicting views in the West. The main actor here, the most powerful country, is the United States, the host and the supplier of major resources, weapons for this war. And with the coming of President Donald Trump into power, I think that is coming to an end. And Europe, on the other hand, do not have the mighty power that US possess within NATO, or individually. Countries in Europe do not have sufficient resources to boost Ukrainian government. Ukrainian government itself, I think the situation at the battlefield, it looks dire, with more casualties and losing the battle. So President Putin has an upper hand. He's winning at the battlefield. So the bigger question for this meeting is whether they continue with the war led by Europe, assisting a Ukraine that is running out of manpower, or get into a negotiated settlement where they can at least bring peace and not lose it all.
Of course, we're seeing these officials coming out of the Ukrainian embassy there, and they're now going to be making their way to the White House. But if you were, to suppose that you were a fly on the wall in that particular briefing, what do you think that would have sounded like, especially when they start to talk about the various roles that each of them need to be taking as they go into this discussion with President Donald Trump? Once again, the European Council president and NATO Secretary General being an incredibly important two voices in that meeting, the sort of briefing that you would expect that they would be given, or the position that they would be taking as they head to the Oval Office?
I think there's a great deal of anxiety. The inability of President Zelensky to convince President Donald Trump, given his last sitting in White House, which was disastrous. And therefore, I think he's coming in very anxious to avoid that kind of dress down from President Donald Trump and his team, and therefore bringing in the other crowd, the rest of Europe, bigger countries that are much closer to United States, to somehow sandwich him and try to boost and protect him in a way. So he's coming from a very weak position. He has no cards, to put it in Donald Trump's language. And therefore, I think what is coming is a Donald Trump that is equally anxious. He wants a peace deal now as he faces possibility of Nobel Peace Prize and the mere fact that he has resolved this issue. And therefore, what's coming, it's more in agreement in favor of President Donald Trump, which links to the Alaska that took place summit on Friday.
Yeah.